Happy Monday, everybody. How's it going?
Good morning. It's going well. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Yeah, of course. So for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, definitely. So Emily, I work at Drizly. I'm a data engineering manager focusing on our data platform, and I'm also managing our analytics engineering product team.
Awesome. Cool.
That sounds like a lot. Let me be frank. That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is. It's been a lot.
And so it sounds like there are two pieces here, like the more general platform and then analytics specific. And so what kind of falls under the heading of like the data platform as opposed to analytics platform?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can kind of explain the structure of our team too, because that might help it make sense to people. So we have a more centralized analytics team at Drizzly. So we just have analytics, and then underneath analytics we have data platform, which is was just me, now is two people, um, analytics engineering and data science. And then underneath analytics engineering, people focus on specific verticals of the business. So there's like the product analytics engineering team, marketing, ops, strategic partnerships. So data platform, which focuses on basically all the tooling that the rest of the analytics team uses. So yeah, our data warehouse, any other tools we use, our processes, how we use those tools, how we communicate with each other, basically. That all falls under data platform, along with like security, data security, governance, stuff like that. Um, and then, yeah, analytics engineering for product specifically. So focusing on like our clickstream data, questions on how new features are doing, A/B testing, um, that whole realm of things.
When you talk about new features, are we talking about machine learning models here, or are we talking more about like features used for analytics of various types?
Like new features on Drizzly,
I
like
see.
yeah,
Okay.
like if we change the layout of the product page or the checkout steps, like stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'll be frank, I don't always see analytics teams necessarily that tied into those decisions. So that's actually really cool to hear that you guys are like fully integrated in that direction. Because to me, at that point, like you're starting to drift more to the realm of data science, right? And so you're crossing over. You're not just doing analytics anymore. Like it's a more of an active
Mm.
process.
Sorry. Keep talking. I'm trying to troubleshoot some comments in the
Oh, okay.
chat
Oh,
here. So
Sounds good.
some people could say they can hear the audio. Some people say they get a black screen. And welcome to streaming onto LinkedIn. Sometimes it usually works until it doesn't. So anyway, continue.
It's recorded just in case, so we'll have this for
And
later.
this will be available as a both. I pasted an alternate YouTube link as well as it'll be posted as podcast audio form afterwards. So anyway,
Cool.
carry on.
Yeah, so being a manager over platform and over analytics, again, a lot of responsibility, and one of the tricky parts of being a data lead is that I feel like it's best to have a strong technical background, and you also have to be good at working with people and processes and things. Tell us a bit about your journey into this role.
yeah, definitely. So, before I was a manager, I was sort of the like tech lead of the team. So, I kind of got that some of the skills around management I think I got from being a tech lead, just around like delegating work and stuff like that, and communicating um, what I was working on, since I was really the only one working on our data platform at the time. And a lot of the decisions that I made, everybody had to be aware of them and like, follow new procedures, new processes, things like that. So I think it prepared me pretty well. Before that, I was a BI analyst on the team. I started on the team when it was pretty small, so I kind of worked across all parts of the business on analytics. Briefly focused on product analytics before then shifting more towards like data engineering, data platform work, and becoming like the tech lead there. So it's kind of come full circle now that I'm kind of back doing product, but on more on the management side now.
Interesting. So something Matt and I talk about quite a bit is the transition from individual contributor to manager. Walk us through your experience with that.
Yeah, it was tough. I didn't ever think like I wanted to be a manager. Like I wasn't one of those people who like knew that's what they wanted to do. I really struggled with knowing if I wanted to stay on the more like technical path or go towards management. Um, I think right now I'm kind of in a in between space where on the data engineering side, I'm still doing a lot of the IC work just because I like have to. And then on the product side, more pure management because there's two AEs who are, doing more of the IC work there, and I don't really need to be as hands-on. Um,
So for the audience, AE stands for
oh yeah,
analytics engineer or
analytics
account executive. Okay, just making sure.
analytics engineer. Yeah, so I'm getting like kind of a balance of it right now, I think. And that's what I'm trying, I think, mostly to figure out is how to strike the right balance between doing the IC work that I have to do still and then being a people manager.
That is definitely the paradox of the transition for sure. Especially if there's any resource constraints, because I think the ideal state is likely that, oh, well, Emily would be managing and other people would be doing the work, but sometimes that's not the case. And so it is definitely a balance. I've been there before. It's not easy. So I empathize and sympathize with where you are. So when you made the transition to management, was there any training or how did you get yourself up to speed on what the expectations would be for the management role?
Yeah. So, Drizly has some internal programs that we can go through when people are interested in people management. So, our like learning and development teams put together it's like a couple weeks where you work with some other people from the company who are, wanting to go towards people management. And there's different um, not really like courses, but like different little trainings that you go through together. We also have like LinkedIn Learning as a company. So there's some things we would watch, like some little trainings to watch in there. Um, so that's on the like, I guess, formal training side. And then, I mean, it's hard to like train until you're like doing it. Like to be a manager, I think you kind of just have to do it. So that's what happened to me is like, okay, I did these trainings, whatever, but then it actually happened and I like became a manager and had to start, trying to hire people. And then in this case, I didn't really hire people for the product team. I inherited the team, so they were already there. Um, but yeah, that's how it kind of happened.
This sounds very typical for a startup where you're thrown into things and you're
Yeah.
asked to wear a whole bunch of different hats. So not just like multiple technical individual contributing roles, but like also having to manage. What would be your advice for someone who's at a small startup facing these kinds of problems?
Yeah. I think for me, it's definitely been a practice in just being very, very strict with like my time and what I'm going to spend time on and how I'm going to like prioritize what I spend my time on. I've had to become much more like ruthless around like my calendar and like saying no to things, which is a good skill to learn, I think, in general, like how to say no to things. So I've had to do a lot more of that for sure.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for all of us, but especially in a startup, there are always people who like where you actually have valuable technical skills or advice, but you just don't always have the time to address those things, and they just kind of have to be on their own sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a balance, though, right? Because I think
Yeah.
your job as a manager is to, at least with your team, is to support them, and all too often, I think that's it kind of goes because you have to balance the needs of what the organization wants against the needs of what your team wants, and sometimes these aren't exactly the same things, right? So, especially in a field like data, where I think skills and the broader ecosystem is moving really fast. Individual contributors really want to advance their skills in certain ways, and sometimes or they want to learn new things, and these may or may not be aligned with what you need as a business or what your team needs immediately, and among other needs that they have. So I think the pandemic also just kind of brought out like a lot of different needs that probably weren't there before, like work-life balance, whatever that means anymore. Quality of life, whatever that is at work. So just different requirements, and yeah, it's a balancing act. And the thing is, as a manager, I know when I first started a long time ago, it was like, you look back at your first, your version 1 of being a manager, and hopefully you're embarrassed by it. So it's an ever evolving thing. So
Yeah. We have a TPM on our team as well, and he's been really, really helpful to me in kind of like revamping our product team like processes for like getting new requests and like how to prioritize, and we're kind of doing more of like an agile sprint process. So yeah, he's been really helpful with like getting that all set up, and that's been helpful when like I have to prioritize like DE and analytics engineering. So when the board or like our backlog is really organized and nice and has all the like information I need, like I can much more easily say, okay, this team's working on this, this, and this. Like maybe they have bandwidth for this certain type of ask, but if someone asks for something a little more complex, then I know I can like push back and be like, okay, well, we need to switch it out for like something else. You know what I mean? Like helps me prioritize on the fly if I need to.
Well, this brings up an important point that sometimes gets lost when we discuss management. I think sometimes when people don't know better, when they first get into management, they think that their role is to keep the people upstairs happy, like everyone who's bringing in requests, executives, when really the role of a manager quite often is to protect their team from too many requests and to make sure that if the team has kind of a vision and an agenda, that's prioritized. And then the other stuff just kind of has to get in line. It's like, okay, what do you guys want to prioritize? We can't do all this stuff. Well, I guess we can do it all very, very poorly, but we're not going to do that. We're going to we're going to funnel requests to my team through me, and I'm going to decide what happens and what doesn't right now.
Yes. Yeah, I feel very strongly about that. Like, I don't want my team to ever feel like they have too much going on or like that they can't like work life balance like that. I don't want them to be feeling like they need to, you know, stay late, work late, whatever it is. Like I want them to feel like they have a manageable workload and like know that what they're working on is like laddering up to some important thing and not just a bunch of random asks that aren't contributing to anything or anything that we can like see impact on.
But how do you set that expectation though? Because I know in my experience, like if I definitely want to establish a good cadence of work-life balance, but occasionally the business has other ideas for you, and it just is what it is. Suddenly you and your team are working. I remember one time I was on vacation, and somebody had promised that we'd be doing a demo at Gartner in 2 weeks for a product that didn't exist, and it needed to be mostly functional. So, against managing a potential mutiny and having to get this thing done, that happened, and that was one of many types of things I've seen. So, I mean, how would you handle a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not going to be possible 100% of the time because, yeah, urgent things come up like that you can't do much about.
Yeah,
But I think that's what I would try. I mean, this hasn't happened so far, but
I
like
hope
if
it doesn't.
if it did, like I'd probably just try my best to like message like why this is urgent, like why this is important and like this is why we need to like maybe stay an extra couple hours to like get this done. Um and it'd be important for me, I think, for myself to like chip in and like show that I'm like working there with them.
Yep.
I wouldn't just want to be telling them like you have to do this and then I'm just off like doing something
Yeah,
else.
you're posting on your Instagram like you're off,
Living
Yeah.
your best life, like on Instagram.
Yeah, this does happen though. I think it was who did I read about? It was the sales executive at better.com. Like she had one of the reasons that I guess they had to do was it better? Is it the one that did all the layoffs anyway? Like I think it was that. But anyway, this woman was posting pics from her Instagram with her and her dog hanging out, and meanwhile, her sales team, who she's responsible for, was not making their sales goals. And then it's larger. A big part of why they had to do the layoffs is because they just drastically missed these sales goals. Meanwhile, this person
Mm.
was off, gallivanting around, not doing a damn thing about anything, frankly. And I think meanwhile also bought like a $12 million house in Aspen or something crazy like that. So it's just, I mean, leading from the front and showing that you're working, I think definitely sets the tone. It's hard to motivate people when they see that you're just, you know, not pulling your weight. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and it should be a tall. It should be like easy to express, but it's amazing how often this happens. So
Yeah.
actually, Mark Keeling has a question here. How do you protect your team while keeping product business happy with progress? It seems like the business always wants things yesterday.
Yeah. I think for what we've tried to do on the analytics team just as a whole is like make our goals very public. So like if there's certain things that are laddering up to like a company goal, like we try to make that very clear so that if someone's asking for something new, we can say like how does it ladder up to this company goal that we're trying to meet? That's our like, top priority or whatever it is. Um and I think people like get it, like, they understand like if you put it in the frame of the company goals or like however your company set up with like OKRs or whatever it is, like as best you can, if you can, show how it ladders up to that, it makes it easier, I think.
It's an interesting vision of both managing up and I would say managing out. So, in other words, instead of just managing your team, you're actually projecting out the stuff that's going on internally so people can see if they have requests why stuff can't happen right away. Like we actually have
Right.
all these other priorities. Interesting. Oh, Joe, I think you're muted.
Now you can hear me.
There we go.
So I'll give you an example how this doesn't work too, where I intentionally after that incident I said where the person like decided, oh, we're gonna spring this on you guys. I intentionally said you're not talking to anybody on my team anymore. Um, and you have to come through me, and it sucked. But all the trust was lost at that point
Mhm.
too. And I intentionally, and it's antithetical to my nature, but I was like, we can't have this anymore. And so it was we kind of went radio silence for a bit, which sucks because I'm much more of the opinion things should be open, but I lost trust in the other stakeholders, and I think that created a very an unfortunate situation that took some time to rebuild, but it kind of is what it is. And maybe in retrospect, that could have been handled differently, but there's certain team dynamics where it's difficult and it's easy to theorize, but it's hard to do in practice. And I think this also comes back to something that, like your opinion on Emily, where so I imagine your company has a mission and values that are stated. How do those align? If they are stated, how do those align with your team's mission and values?
Yeah, yeah. I think so. Yeah, we have like Drizzly mission, Drizzly values, all that stuff. we have a couple things like company wide that try to, incentivize those values. So we have this thing called bonusly where like you can give people basically like money that they can spend on like rewards and whatever. And if you see someone, aligning to a certain value, you can like give them whatever we're calling it Driz bucks because it's Drizly. Towards like those values that you see people. We also have like company awards where people get awarded like, one of our things is like solve. So there's like the solve award, like the care award. If you like see someone, you can nominate them and they get this award. So I think company wide we try to do that just so everyone's aligned to the same goals, the same values. Um, and then in terms of like our company goals that are measurable, we do a lot on analytics as a team to make that as visible to the company with like our data. So we have dashboards that show what all of our goals are, how we're tracking against them. Those get sent, like they're scheduled to get sent to everybody's emails every week. So like blasting the company with like, this is where we are. These are like our OKRs. This is where we're currently at, things like that. So we try to make it like pretty visible as best we can.
Got a couple questions here. Mark has a follow-up question to the earlier one, but I think it's kind of related to about communication. How do you communicate through that team roadmap through a newsletter, Confluence page, or other? What has worked for you?
Yeah, we have a Confluence page. We also do, I think we bi-weekly now, bi-weekly like release notes that we send out saying, this is what we accomplished, this is in progress, stuff like that. Or if like there's a cool new dashboard or like analysis that someone did, we'll include that in the release notes. That's what we've been doing. And then, of course, there's like the company roadmap, or like since I'm doing analytics engineering for product, like we roll up into the product roadmap. So they have like that's like a whole nother thing we have to roll into. But depending on like which stakeholder group the team is working with, they'll like roll up into that specific org's roadmap as well.
Got it. Another question here. Do you use any template or system to gather organization data needs in analytics scenarios? Basically, requirements gathering. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Our company in general has been moving more towards using like PRDs, uh, project requirement
Requirements
doc.
documents. Yep.
Yeah. We use that through Confluence, or create those through Confluence. We also have like different Slack workflows. Like we have like a product analytics request channel for my team, and people can submit requests through there, and we can turn them into Jira tickets, um, things like that.
What fraction of your work comes? It sounds like a lot of your analytics work comes straight out of product. Like Drizly deploys a new feature, and then it's like, all right, we need to do the analytics around this so we can A/B test and see what makes sense. To what extent are you driven by those product requests versus other just general analytics requests?
Yeah. For product, we usually know somewhat ahead of time because, like, engineering has to design the feature, build it out, all that. So we're like a part of that process. We design the tracking. So we have like steps within that process that, we are in charge of. Um, and then there's always like ad hoc requests, like someone, it's asking for some number, whatever it is. There's certain things that I think if we see a common thread of like people are asking for a lot of the same thing, then we'll turn that into, okay, let's figure out a way to make this more self-service or like more automated so we don't have to do this as a one-off request every time. So if there's stuff like that, or like if we see, we want to optimize this like model, this like DBT model, or this like Looker dashboard, like there's stuff we'll come up ourselves that's like stuff we want to improve, and then we'll work those in when we have space between the things that are coming from our product stakeholders.
That's pretty cool. Got another question here. Can you please go through the tooling used in data engineering?
Yeah. So on the data engineering side, I mean, we pretty much use the same stack as the rest of analytics, but I guess the tool that's mainly used on DE that's not really used by anyone else is Dagster. And that's where we write all of our like custom Python, ETL, machine learning stuff, is all done there. But outside of that, I mean, we're using Snowflake, we're using, BBT, Looker, whatever other tools the rest of the team's using.
Did you get to pick those tools, or did you inherit that stack?
We got to pick them. When I started on the team in 2019, we didn't really have a data stack. So starting from then on, we started like building out an actual data stack. So it was kind of fun. We got to pick, all the stuff we wanted to use.
Interesting. How did you guys decide on Dagster? I'm actually a big fan of it. We've had done shows with Nick a couple of times, and I've actually personally done a lot of Airflow. I'm well aware of Airflow's flaws and excited to see him doing something about that. Obviously, the Astronomer and Airflow teams are also like competing in this space. But yeah, how did you land on that product, and how has it worked for you?
Yeah. So we had a data engineer previously, Dennis Hume. He's at Dutchy now, but he I forget how he found out about Dagster, but he was the one who brought on Dagster, or like wanted to use Dagster, and we tried it out, and we really liked it. We started off like self-hosting. It's like open source. This was before they had their cloud offering. Um, and yeah, I think we just all really liked the tool. It was Dagster was actually my first like I would say like real like data engineering experience, was like building pipelines in Dagster. And I feel like it really helped me learn a lot of the like best practices around like data engineering and like building pipelines and stuff like that. So I've been a big fan. I think it really like helped accelerate my like data engineering ramp up.
Interesting. How would you explain the difference between data engineering and analytics engineering? I think it's a question that our audience has quite often.
Yeah, I'm sure it differs at every company, but for us, data engineering is really like how we get all of our data into our data warehouse. So, building all of those pipelines out. It's also a lot around like data modeling and like data quality. Like if the analytics engineering team has like specific questions on data modeling, if there's something they're stuck on, like they always can come to us to answer some of those questions. Like we'll be more like, I guess, like consultants in that case to them to help them figure that out if there's like a specific complex like problem they're working on. And then at least for my team, also a lot of like data governance and data security that we work really closely with our security team and like IT teams. on stuff like that, making sure like permissions are correct and like certain data is only available to like the people who should see it and stuff like that. So it's I feel like it goes pretty broad, but we also help with a lot of the analytics engineering process, like around like using Git and code review and PRs and all of that stuff we help out with when people need it.
And maybe that's the point in terms of the difference. Like data engineering is so vast, and we've had people comment on that as well, especially like after we wrote the book, which is of course extremely broad. And they're like, man, there's so much different stuff under the heading of data engineering. Whereas analytics, you get to focus on analytics basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sonny Rivera. What's up, Sonny? Actually doing a panel next week with him on data modeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trust.
Yeah. So Sonny asks, can you discuss how you're building and maintaining the trust of data consumers? Good question.
Yeah. I think like we were lucky in the sense that we've always kind of had good like trust with our stakeholders. So I think it's more so like maintaining it versus building it, for me at least. So I think kind of what we've already talked about with, prioritizing requests and like making sure people understand where they sit in terms of like the work we're doing and just being pretty timely and getting them that information, even if we can't get to their ask right away, at least explaining like when we can get to it and why, if it's not, when they want it to be. I think just having that like open communication goes a long way. And just like if they understand why something has to be pushed back and like how it rolls up to, hopefully the same company goals that they're after. I think that's worked pretty well, just like trying to work in public as much as possible.
I guess to flip the question, what are some ways you think you could destroy trust really quickly with your data consumers?
Yeah. I guess kind of the opposite. Like if we're not telling them what we're working on, if we're just like sloppy with like the output we're giving them, if especially for product analytics, it's like you have to be very detail oriented with the data we're working with is our clickstream data. It's like massive, it's kind of messy. There's a lot of like complex like logic and like cleaning that has to happen. So like if we make a mistake and someone else catches it before we do, that's not a great look for us. So yeah, I think just like being very detail oriented, like making sure we're QAing our work and not just giving them some query that we like didn't double check.
Yes, things can go wrong in so many different ways. Clickstream is especially tricky. Clickstream is one of my kind of standard examples when I talk about this notion of data entropy, and that is with data. So one complication we have as data engineers is our systems can get messed up in various ways, right? So we have all those problems, plus we have all these problems coming from the outside world. So your site could be attacked by bots or all kinds of things. How do you guys think about those problems? Like, do you have observability processes in place to say, hey, these stats look weird. What's going on here? Let's at least let people know.
And it's actually related to this question that somebody asked, which what are the processes and tech stack do you use for data testing and data validation? We can include observability into this, but what do you do?
Yeah, bots have actually been a huge issue for us in the last probably like year or so. We never used to have problems with bots, and then once Drizly became more popular, it just happens. All the people making bots just like want to target you, I guess, at that point. But we've had to build in a lot more process around that, specifically which we definitely get a lot of help from our like telemetry infrastructure and like security teams. They have like a separate tools to block bots and stuff like that on the site, but it doesn't work 100% of the time. So sometimes they still get through, and then it's kind of on us to figure out what a bot looks like versus like a real person, which is an interesting problem to solve because
I
they
won't
just
ask you how you do that, just so they don't have to reverse engineer it, but that
yeah.
sounds tricky. So
Yeah, and like bots, they're just gonna get the people who are building them, like they get smarter every time when you block them. So like they just look more and more like a real person. So that's been interesting. But yeah, I guess in general, what we use for testing is DBT, and we have a lot of tests that we'll have like anomaly tests of like we have on product specifically, if there's X% more sessions than what it normally is, we'll get like an alert for that, and we can look into it and see if is it bots, is it something else, is it sometimes it's legit if it's like a holiday or something like that, like New Year's Eve, for example, we get like the most traffic, but that stuff we know, so we can ignore it. But yeah, we use a lot of DBT tests for that stuff.
it's pretty cool. Speaking of DBT, kind of switching gears a bit. So you also teach a class in DBT.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, so there's a new education platform called CoRise that I teach, that I've taught this DBT course on since November of last year was our first round, and we've had two more since then, and we have one coming up in October. But yeah, it's been awesome. We basically go through for 4 weeks. We like learn DBT from scratch. We build a DBT project, build models. We have like a fake company and like data that we work with. Asking questions that maybe like someone would actually be asking you at like an e-commerce company. So we try to base it on as close to like real world how you'd be using the tool. But it's great. Yeah, we have a couple TAs from the DBT community as well. So there's like a lot of people, a lot of resources to answer questions, and a lot of knowledge to be shared.
Yeah, that's very cool. Let me ask you a broader question. I mentioned before the call that Joe and I are also involved in education, and I think we have thoughts about where education needs to go. And you also got a master's degree in business analytics, if I understand correctly. What are your thoughts on the state of education for data? What are we doing right, and what could we be doing better? I think this question is very much in the air right now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like when I went through college, there wasn't anything related to like analytics. I kind of made my own. I did a undergrad in information systems, and I minored in stats. Um, in information systems, there was some stuff that was like kind of related. So there's like a SQL, like we learned SQL, we learned like some database stuff. Um, but it was kind of more geared to like IT, less towards data. So I did my first internship in undergrad in analytics, so I kind of like knew that's the direction I wanted to go. Um, so that's why I could kind of like, you know, twist it in that way to make it relate to like the job I wanted to do. But I think now there's definitely more programs coming out around like data science and business analytics and stuff like that. At least my master's program, I think, was more focused on data science, I would say, because like a lot of the classes were more like using Stata and like using Python, but more for like data science, not really for like engineering, which was interesting. I kind of thought I wanted to go in that direction, and then I pivoted more towards the data eng side of things.
Interesting. What's it been like making the transition from student to teacher? This is sometimes a straightforward path. I would say more than often than not, it's hard. So yeah, walk us through that.
Yeah, it's been cool. I think hearing, like, I think I'm still learning a lot from my students, and like this was my first experience like teaching actually, um, in a formal sense. So just like learning what helps them learn better, and like getting a lot of feedback, lots and lots of feedback, on how we can make things easier to understand, easier to follow, easier to learn. So after every cohort, and even during, we get feedback and we'll make changes to the course or the content, um, based on what people are saying they like, what could have been better, what like they had trouble understanding. So it's been cool. Like a lot of stuff I didn't really think about before. Yeah, it's been great. And then just seeing people like have those moments of like, oh, like I understand this now. And then they get really excited because they're like, I understand this thing I couldn't understand. And seeing people, move into new jobs if that's what they wanted, if that was their goal. Yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, that's been one of the most exciting things for us teaching. We just kind of teach one class at the University of Utah, but seeing our students get jobs and be very successful.
Well, when the light bulb turns on too,
Yep.
for certain things, right? We teach an advanced SQL class, and it's fun. Some of these concepts, after a few tries, they hit home, and I think it's rewarding. Matt used to be a professor actually, so I don't know what that was like for you. The reward of teaching math and whatnot, but
It's fun. Yeah. I was a math professor, like Joe said, and taught a lot of like introductory classes, and then a handful of more advanced classes and graduate classes and such. And yeah, Joe, you look like you had something to say.
no, I mean, but it just but what I find interesting in education right now is, and what I think is pretty cool, is people can just take these DBT classes right now. I think before, there was probably a bit more gatekeeping in terms of skill acquisition, education, and typically, well, way back in the day, universities were probably the only place you could do that kind of stuff, really, or some sort of some offshoot of an apprenticeship program. The MOOCs came along and I think started changing things. And now it's not even a MOOC anymore. It's kind of like, well, you just want to sign up for a course or a boot camp on the specific topic. Like you could do that too. So I think that's pretty awesome. So
I feel like there's still a lot of opportunities in the space, though. I feel like we've been handed all these amazing tools, and we maybe aren't fully exploiting them yet. So, like in the future, what's the mix between like audio, video, interactive, hands-on, reading, like all these different pieces that you can put into a modern educational program?
it's all going to be metaverse, actually.
Well,
so,
okay, yes.
Joking.
Sponsored by Meta.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I've liked that about Co-Rise, how they like have the different like things that you can interact with. So like there's the live component on Zoom where I'm actually like talking live. There's like the Slack portion so people can ask questions and talk to each other and help each other out. So there's a kind of building the community aspect. And then of course there's like the async content that's actually like the reading and like videos and stuff like that. I think it's been a pretty good balance, I think, of like async and synchronous.
How did you find that balance? So I think before the show, you said you had like 3 cohorts so far. How did that balance shift, or I guess evolve, over those different cohorts?
Yeah, it's stayed relatively the same, just in terms of like, you know, 1 hour a week is like the live lecture. There's like the office hours that are live. Usually we'll do some sort of like fireside chat and have someone come in and just like talk about their experience. And then, yeah, the Slack piece, where people can talk and ask questions. The part that I think we as like the course team really like to see is when other students start like helping each other in Slack instead of like, waiting for one of us to jump in, because all of us, are working full time. It's not like the course isn't any of our full time jobs. So it's cool to see like students helping each other out. And that's what we try to see in maybe the first week people are more timid, but like as it goes on, more people like feel comfortable like jumping in and helping each other out.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the class I teach, I'm actually running it right now, and Joe and I have alternated this a bit. But we have very strict like no copying policies, because people will just go copy stuff from online and you can lose points for that. But at the same time, my attitude is like, if it's in the discussions, if someone asks a question and someone responds, then I'm going to be a lot more relaxed about it. Like if it's something where they're interacting and hopefully figuring things out together, like that's the kind of interaction I want to see.
Well, that's the real world,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
exactly.
But I think it's, the balance too is striking that level of trust and collaboration with the students, because I think you're so used to the way, school is traditionally taught and classes are taught, which is there's a teacher and there's students, and there might be study groups, but Slack is interesting too, where like study groups, I know back when I was in college and high school, long time ago, they're kind of cliquish in some ways, right?
Mhm.
Like you're gonna, talk to people or work with people who, you can you just want to hang out with, right? So it's, but with Slack, it's a lot more anonymous, and so you in most cases you probably don't even know who that person is, and
Mhm.
what's kind of cool is you're just going off the quality of the contributions and of the ideas rather than, does this person look like they're fun to hang out with or something like that. So it's kind of interesting
Yeah.
seeing that evolve.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's cool too because we have people from like all over the world pretty much. So people are on at different times, working at different times, and it's cool to see like, you know, someone who's working in like, where did we have someone? We had someone like in New Zealand, you know, they're asking questions when it's like 2 a.m. here or whatever. But then maybe there's someone like in the class that's like in Europe, maybe they're like a little closer, like they'll be on Slack, they can like help each other out before like our side of the world is even awake. Um, it's cool to see that too, just like people that wouldn't normally ever work together because they're on different sides of the world, like
Mhm.
actually being able to like work together is pretty cool.
Well, it underscores too. I mean, people have been talking about commerce globalization since at least the '90s, maybe longer than that. But we're going through a new phase of globalization where it's also just like globalization and collaboration in classrooms and in companies where your coworker could be living anywhere in the world and you have to figure out how to work together, and it's not easy in spite of all the tools
Yeah.
that we have now.
Well, yeah, I remember the first time I saw this was Andrew Ng's machine learning course that came out. It wasn't even on Coursera at the time. I think it was just a standalone class. This must have been 2010 or 2011. But I think his first cohort, he had like 100,000 students sign up,
Wow.
which was pretty cool. I mean, I didn't even know that there are that many people interested in machine learning. I was one of them. I took the first class, and I thought that was pretty awesome. To see not just, I think, material presented in a really good way, which Andrew does, but also to collaborate with people, all around the world. A lot of students from India and, I would say underrepresented, and very impoverished countries. But everyone was motivated to, learn machine learning, and frankly, it didn't really matter where you're from. It's like as long as you had the motivation and I think the contributions, to hang out, like that was what's most important. So that was a game-changing moment in my opinion, because that opened up the door for well, then Andrew shortly thereafter, I mean, he co-founded Coursera. Then that changed a lot of things. So, because before that, learning, I mean, I think that was the first data science class. It was, and before that, what you might have taken some AI class at a university, or I think MIT OpenCourseWare was available, but I mean, that was a relatively new thing as well. But until then, you had to go listen to people like Matt lecture in a hall with like 10 people, and it's like, and pay a lot of money, and like a $200 for like a book about this big. So, Mark has an interesting. He says it's interesting about copying from online is punished in academics, but in the real world is how you maximize your productivity to a certain extent. It's true.
Yeah, I'll respond to that by saying it depends on how the copying happens, right? Like and I think this goes in business as well, right? Or actually in LinkedIn, this has become a big issue. Like, I'm happy to see someone take my ideas on LinkedIn and riff on them and cite me. That's fantastic. But if it's like just word for word copying with no credit, no citation, then I'm not too happy about it. It's the same thing in the real world, right? What I want people doing in a job and in a business is like looking at a bunch of resources and then synthesizing to create something useful for what they're trying to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, I remember one class I recently taught, we found several students who had just copied the answers from each other, and I had to send a scathing note saying, if this happens again, I will take, maximum disciplinary action, including expelling you from school. So this is not allowed. Just because what it does is it reinforces a type of behavior that manifests itself in the real world. To wit, we found we found passages of our book copied verbatim online with no attribution, and people were just trying to pass it off as their own writing. And I'm like, that's the kind of habit that you want to avoid, because you don't want to be known as a plagiarizer, or maybe you do. I don't know. But nowadays on LinkedIn, especially, I don't think people care anymore. It's just kind of a free for all. But but what it reflects poorly on is your ability to, at a minimum, be original. So, but I don't know. There's a fine line. Otherwise, it starts a slippery slope, and pretty soon, like, what else are you going to accept? So, but yeah, it's fun. Cool. I guess a question I always like to ask guests is, I see you're involved in the analytics engineering world quite a bit, as well as data engineering. Where do you see things going over the next, say, 3 years with the industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I definitely don't claim to know what's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think even like 3 years ago what things were like. I mean, I think maybe I can more speak to like maybe how I see our team evolving.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So kind of how I mentioned earlier, I think like we're kind of like a full stack analytics team. So the analytics engineers do everything from like the data modeling all the way to Looker and the analysis and talking to stakeholders. I think at some point, probably soon, we're going to have to start specializing a little more, especially as the company grows even more. It's not going to be sustainable to do like that whole life cycle of things. There's going to probably need to be analytics engineers who are just focused on like the data modeling piece, like the DBT piece, and then there's going to be like more of a pure like analyst role who does the like Looker and like dashboard and actual like analysis and like communicating with stakeholders piece. I think I see that happening probably within the next like year or two, on our team at least. And then probably the same for data engineering. I think right now we kind of do everything in terms of data engineering on the team. I think we're probably going to specialize a little more in like the streaming stack, like batch, ETL, security, governance, data, like that could have a whole team around it. So I think we'll start to just specialize more in those areas across the team in the next few years. I don't know how much the tooling is going to change.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It changes so fast. I imagine we'll see a whole new set of tools. I saw an interesting point made recently on LinkedIn, and there's been this like debate about the modern data stack. And the point they made was like, hey, the stack actually doesn't matter nearly as much as the people and processes that are running it. You
Right.
can swap tools in and out. If you have a bad team, then you're going to have bad data. If you have a good team, then you're going to have good
Right.
data.
Exactly.
Yeah, I still see some of the best performing data teams I've ever seen are just using Excel. But the outputs that they provided and the value they provided was, I think, it was awesome compared to some teams I've seen where they're over indexed on tools and still can't manage to output anything. So
Mhm.
I'll take a highly performing team that uses primitive tools over a low performing team with the best tools any day of the week. So
Right.
Mark asks, what areas are going to be the hardest to specialize in as data engineering, as a data engineering organization matures? And he asks
Mhm.
also why.
Hmm. I think for my own experience, at least the newest space to us has been like the streaming piece. We're experimenting right now with using Materialize and Kafka. Um, we're using MSK, which is like hosted Kafka in Amazon in AWS. So that I think probably we have the most to learn. Um, streaming I think is also just like generally a pretty like complex area. So maybe that's my answer. I think probably also like data governance because like
Hmm.
there's so many more like regulation coming out around that stuff and it's like so hard to keep up with. It's different, by state, by country, by like whatever. So that I think is another piece that's like pretty complex and is just going to keep getting harder and harder.
Yeah, I think
Gov-
even Utah has their own privacy regulation now, right, Matt?
Yeah, yeah, and I actually a couple months ago I wrote an article about this, and there are some parallels in the history of regulation, in particular around regulation of auto emissions. So when auto emission standards started to come out, California had one, and then other states were threatening to pass their own. And you can imagine if I'm Ford or Toyota or whatever, trying to deal with like 50 separate state regulations. So basically, at that point, the EPA stepped in and said, either you follow California's rule, or here's another rule you can follow, but you can't have your own. And I kind of feel like at some point we need something similar with privacy regulations because, like, for Drizly or for any small startup to try to deal with 50 separate regulations is a total nightmare. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, someday, it's an interesting one. But I've seen like the when GDPR came out, I remember some data teams because they were up against the I think it was May when it came out in 2018 or whatever. But like they were up against the time limit, and they're just like, well, screw it. Our default is going to be we're just going to delete all data that's older than 30 days,
Mm.
and not even anonymize it. We're just deleting everything. And can you imagine trying to do analytics
Right.
at
with
that
no
point?
history.
Yeah, and that's the default. What I mean by this though is like, one option is that companies just do less analytics, and that's kind of how that goes. And then I don't think it's, I don't think people want that, right? But yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes too. I mean, hopefully there's a more universal privacy regulation, but again, can barely agree on the same time of day. We're looking at the same clock, so who knows?
Or the
Right.
value of pi for math people, right? We have all kinds of things we can argue about.
Oh yeah. It's been yeah, fun times. Well, cool. I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. Emily, it's been great to have you on the show. For people who want to learn more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I think my LinkedIn was linked somewhere and Twitter. Um, those are probably the two main spots.
Nice, cool. And yeah, you want to give a plug for your class on co-rise as well?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so corise.com. I think you can find my course on there somewhere. The next run is October. So I think we're gonna start the first week of October. But yeah, it's registration is open. Oh, Mary's here. She took my class. She's awesome.
Oh, nice. I just did we did a podcast together last week in Denver. So it was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Um,
Mary.
but yeah, definitely check it out. If anyone has like more questions on it, yeah, reach out to me. LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever works. I'm happy to answer questions about it.
Awesome. Sounds fun. And cool. So this Friday we have Veronica Durgan. She's going to be on the show. She's actually a fellow Bostonite. You guys, I don't know if you've ever met, but this is going to be fun. And then next week we have Josh Starmer from Stats Quest. He's going to be on the show. I actually had the pleasure of hanging out with Josh. Him and a bunch of other content producers were in Salt Lake City all last week. So it was a lot of fun. So
He's got a great book and a really great YouTube channel as well.
his YouTube channel kills it.
Yeah.
He's got like what, almost 1 million followers on that thing. It's crazy.
And he wasn't even, he didn't start trying to be a YouTuber. He was just trying to create content.
Yeah, and he's super humble.
people.
He's just like, oh yeah, I do YouTube once in a while. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so do we. And if you haven't got it, get Fundamentals of Data Engineering. It's out on Amazon. It is shipping now. So it is. Last time I checked this morning, it's still the bestseller on Amazon. So buy 15,000 copies for your data team, or how many other people on your data team. You can also get it online at O'Reilly.com, or you can buy the Kindle version. I think it's probably available as other ebook formats anyway. But yeah, it's getting a lot of good reviews so far. So, and if you like the book, drop a 5-star review on Amazon, O'Reilly, and cool. Yeah, thanks for your support. Thanks, Emily. It's been great having you on. So,
Thank you.
Great chat. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the audience. We'll see you all on Friday. All right. Take care.